The signal came from a small blue planet on the edge of nowhere. Deep in space, massive alien ships picked up the radio waves the humans had been sending into the darkness for decades. The messages were simple, just numbers, music, and voices. Speaking in different languages, Admiral Krickstall stood on the bridge of his flagship, studying the data. His 6 eyes glowed as he read the reports. These humans were new to space travel. They had only a few colonies and primitive weapons. The Zephyrian hegemony had been watching them for months now. How many worlds do they control? Krickstall asked his intelligence officer. 7 colonies, sir. Maybe 10 million humans total. Their biggest weapons are simple nuclear missiles. Krickstall's mouth twisted into what might have been a smile. The hegemony controlled thousands of worlds across 6 different alien species. Their fleets numbered in the millions of ships. Their armies counted in the trillions. These humans would be easy prey. On the human colony of New Denver, Jake Morrison wiped sweat from his face as he worked deep in the mining tunnels. The planet was hot and dusty, but it had good mineral deposits. Jake had been mining here for 3 years, sending money back to his family on Earth. "Hey, Jake." His partner Lisa Brooks called from across the tunnel. "You see that weird reading on the scanner?" Jake walked over and looked at her equipment. The deep space sensors showed something big moving toward their system. Very big. Probably just an asteroid field, Jake said. Nothing to worry about, but Lisa wasn't so sure. She had worked on sensor equipment before coming to New Denver. The readings looked wrong, too organized, too purposeful. Above them, in the colony's command center, Administrator Ryan Campbell was having the worst day of his career. The orbital station had detected massive energy signatures approaching the system. Whatever was coming had more ships than humanity had ever built. "Sir, we're getting a transmission," his communications officer reported. "It's not in any human language." The main screen filled with an alien face. Krickstall looked down at the humans with cold eyes. When he spoke, his words were translated by the ship's computer. "Humans of New Denver, you will surrender your colony immediately. Resistance will result in death." Ryan Campbell felt his heart pounding. He had been a colonial administrator for 15 years, but nothing had prepared him for this. He looked around the room at his staff. They were all looking at him, waiting for an answer. We don't understand," Campbell replied. "Who are you? What do you want?" "We are the Zephyrian hegemony. This system now belongs to us. You have 1 hour to surrender all weapons and submit to our authority." The transmission ended. Campbell stared at the blank screen, his mind racing. New Denver had no real military, just a few security officers and some mining equipment. The colony's defense platforms were 40 years old and barely functional. "Get me a channel to Earth," he ordered. "Emergency priority." But when they tried to send the message, they found that something was jamming their long-range communications. The aliens had cut them off from the rest of human space. Down in the mines, Jake and Lisa felt the ground shake. They looked up as dust fell from the tunnel ceiling. "What was that?" Lisa asked. Before Jake could answer, their emergency communicators crackled to life. It was Ryan Campbell's voice, filled with panic. "All colonists report to emergency stations. Immediately. We are under attack by hostile alien forces." This is not a drill. Jake and Lisa looked at each other in shock. Aliens here? It seemed impossible. They ran through the tunnels toward the surface, joining streams of other miners and workers. When they reached the colony's main dome, they could see through the transparent walls into space above. The sky was full of ships, massive. Alien vessels hung in orbit like metal clouds. They were huge, each one bigger than New Denver's entire orbital station. And there were hundreds of them, with more arriving every minute. "My God," Lisa whispered. Where did they all come from? As they watched, 3 human transport ships tried to leave the planet's atmosphere. They were civilian vessels, carrying families who were trying to escape. The alien ships opened fire. The transports exploded in bright flashes of light. Everyone in the dome fell silent as the debris burned up in the atmosphere like falling stars. They killed them, someone said quietly. They just killed them all. Jake felt anger rising in his chest. Those ships had been full of innocent people. Children, families just trying to get to safety. Ryan Campbell's voice came over the colony's speakers again. All citizens remain calm. We are attempting to negotiate with the alien forces. But even as he spoke, alien landing craft were dropping through the atmosphere like deadly rain. Each craft was the size of a city block, and they carried thousands of enemy soldiers. Lisa grabbed Jake's arm. We need to get to the emergency shelters. But Jake was looking at the alien ships landing near the mining facilities. He knew those tunnels better than anyone. If the aliens wanted to control New Denver, they would need to control the mines. No, he said. We need to get back down there. Those tunnels might be our only advantage. As the first alien soldiers marched through New Denver's streets, Jake and Lisa made their way back toward the mining complex. They didn't know it yet, but they were about to become part of something much bigger than themselves. Above them, Admiral Crickstall watched the conquest begin. His computers calculated that New Denver would fall within 6 hours. The other human colonies would follow soon after. This war would be over before it really began. He had no way of knowing that he had just made the biggest mistake in the history of the Zephyrian hegemony. The attacks came all at once. 7 human colonies woke up to find alien fleets in their skies. The hegemony had planned it perfectly, or so they thought. On New Denver, Jake and Lisa crouched in the mining tunnels as explosions shook the ground above them. Alien soldiers were moving through the colony, taking control of all the important buildings. But they hadn't found the tunnel systems yet. How many people made it down here? Jake asked Kate Sullivan, a former military officer who had become their unofficial leader. About 200, Kate replied. Mostly miners and engineers, a few security guards. It wasn't much against an army of aliens, but it was something. Kate had been a sergeant in the Colonial Defense Force before retiring. To New Denver. She knew how to fight, even if her equipment was 40 years out of date. What do we have for weapons? She asked Ben Torres, who had been the colony's chief engineer. Ben looked grim. Mining charges, some cutting tools, a few old rifles from the security office. That's about it. Above ground, the aliens were setting up their command posts. They moved in perfect formation, like they had done this 1,000 times before. Their weapons were advanced, energy beams that could cut through steel like paper. Their armor was thick and strong, but they were also predictable. Jake noticed it first as he watched them through a hidden camera. Look at how they move, he told Lisa. They always stay in the same pattern. Same spacing, same formation. Lisa nodded. She had been thinking the same thing. It's like they're following a rulebook. Meanwhile, on Earth, Admiral Sam Hayes stood in the command center of the human fleet. The reports coming in were terrible. New Harmony had fallen in less than 6 hours. Port Victoria was under siege. Only New Denver was still sending signals, and those were getting weaker. How many ships do we have ready for combat? Hayes asked his aide. 43 cruisers, sir. Maybe 100 smaller vessels. Hayes closed his eyes. The alien fleet that had attacked the colonies numbered in the thousands. His entire force wouldn't last 10 minutes in a straight fight. Get me Dr. Nick Warren, he ordered. We need those experimental weapons ready now. Dr. Warren was working around the clock in his laboratory. His team had been developing new technologies for years, but they were meant for exploration, not war. His assistant Chloe Martinez hadn't slept in 2 days as they tried to turn scientific equipment into weapons. "The adaptive AI system is almost ready," Chloe reported. "But we need more data on alien tactics." "What about the resonance weapons?" Warren asked. "Still theoretical. We need to capture some alien technology to test it." That was the problem. The aliens were winning too fast for humans to learn much about them. But Warren kept working. He had to. Millions of lives depended on it. Back on New Denver, Jake's group was learning fast. They had set off their first mining charges under an alien patrol. The explosion had killed dozens of enemy soldiers and damaged 2 of their vehicles. "They don't like surprises," Kate observed as they watched the aliens scramble to reorganize. "Look how long it's taking them to adapt." She was right. The aliens seemed confused when their standard tactics didn't work. They would stop, regroup, and call for instructions from their commanders. It gave the humans time to escape and plan. Their next attack, Lisa had made an important discovery in the colony's industrial section. The fabrication machines could be reprogrammed to make weapons instead of mining equipment. They weren't as good as military weapons, but they were better. And nothing. "We can make about 50 rifles a day," she told the group. Plus ammunition and explosives. It was a start. Jake organized the miners into small teams. They knew the tunnel systems better than anyone. They could move around under the colony. Without being detected, Ben Torres had his own project. He was modifying the mining ships that the aliens hadn't found yet. They were tough little vessels, built to work in asteroid fields. With some changes, they might be able to fight. "I can mount the cutting lasers as weapons," he explained. "They're not as powerful as military guns, but they can punch through armor at close range." The aliens were getting frustrated. General Vorthak had expected New Denver to surrender by now. Instead, his soldiers were being attacked by invisible enemies who knew the ground better than they did. "Send more troops," he ordered. "Flood the colony with soldiers until we find them all." But that just gave the humans more targets. Jake's team struck at supply convoys. They sabotaged alien equipment. They rescued captured colonists. Each small victory taught them something new about how to fight. The breakthrough came when they captured an alien communication device. Amy Foster, who had been the colony's communications specialist, managed to crack its basic functions. "They're using the same frequencies across all their forces," she discovered. "If we can jam these channels, we can disrupt their coordination." Kate smiled for the first time in days. Do it. When the jamming started, the effect was immediate. Alien patrols lost contact with their command posts. Units wandered into prepared ambushes. The perfect formations began to fall apart. On Earth, Dr. Warren received the first good news in weeks. His deep space sensors had detected something interesting about the alien fleets. "They're using predictable attack patterns," Chloe reported. "The AI system is starting to learn their tactics." Warren felt a surge of hope. If they could predict what the aliens would do, they might have a chance. Admiral Hayes was thinking the same thing. Instead of trying to match the aliens ship for ship, he would use humanity's advantages. Human ships were smaller and faster. Human crews could adapt quickly to changing situations. "Prepare the fleet for guerrilla operations," he ordered. "We're not going to fight them the way they expect." Back on New Denver, Jake stood in a tunnel overlooking the alien command post. 3 months ago, he had been a simple miner. Now he was part of a resistance that was actually winning small victories against impossible odds. "You ready for this?" Lisa asked, checking her improvised weapon. Jake nodded. Tonight they were going to attack the aliens' main communications array. If they could cut off the enemy's ability to coordinate, maybe the other human colonies would have a chance too. He didn't know it yet, but across human space, other groups were having the same idea. The war was changing. The aliens still had more ships and soldiers, but the humans were learning to fight in ways the hegemony had never seen before. The storm was just beginning. 3 months into the war, something was wrong. General Vorthak stared at the reports from across human space, his forearms twitching with frustration. The conquest should have been finished by now. Instead, human resistance was getting stronger. On New Denver, Jake's resistance had grown from 200 desperate colonists to an organized network of fighters. They moved through the tunnel systems like ghosts, striking at alien supply lines and disappearing before the enemy could respond. Lisa had turned the colony's old fabrication center into a weapons factory. The machines ran day and night, producing rifles, explosives, and ammunition. But more importantly, she had learned to copy alien technology. "Look at this," she told Jake, holding up a captured energy weapon. "I figured out how their power cells work. We can make our own now." It was a breakthrough that changed everything. Human weapons had been weak compared to alien energy beams. Now they could fight with equal firepower. Ben Torres had achieved something even more impressive. He had taken 3 mining ships and turned them into fighting vessels. They weren't pretty, but they were effective. The aliens never expected attack ships to come from inside asteroid mining operations. "The key is staying mobile," Ben explained to the other resistance leaders. "Their big ships can't keep up with us in the asteroid fields." Kate Sullivan had developed new tactics that took advantage of human flexibility. Instead of holding fixed positions, her teams would hit multiple targets at once, forcing the aliens to split their forces. "They think in straight lines," she observed. "When we attack from 3 directions at once, it takes them forever to figure out how to respond." On Earth, Dr. Warren's laboratory had become the most important place in human space. His adaptive AI system was learning alien tactics faster than anyone had hoped. Chloe Martinez had barely left the lab in weeks, feeding new data into the computers. "The AI has identified 17 different attack patterns," she reported, "and it's starting to predict what they'll do next." Warren nodded, studying the displays. The aliens used the same formations over and over. They were like a giant machine, powerful but predictable. "What about the resonance weapons?" he asked. Chloe smiled. "We got the frequency data from New Denver. If we can hit their shields at exactly the right wavelength, they'll collapse." It was theoretical, but it was hope. Warren's team had been working on prototype weapons that could exploit this weakness. If they worked, human ships might actually be able to damage alien vessels. Admiral Haas was preparing for the biggest gamble of his career. Instead of defending Earth directly, he was planning to attack alien supply lines throughout human space. It would leave Earth vulnerable, but it might give the colonies a chance to fight back. "The plan is called Operation Wildfire," he explained to his officers. "We split our forces into small groups and hit them everywhere at once." It went against everything in military doctrine. You were supposed to concentrate your forces, not scatter them. But Hayes had learned something important from the colony reports. Humans were better at chaos than aliens were. Amy Foster had become the key to the whole resistance network. Using captured alien equipment, she had set up secret communication channels between all the human colonies. For the first time, resistance groups could coordinate their attacks. "New Denver is planning to hit the orbital platform tomorrow," she reported to Kate. "Port Victoria wants to attack at the same time." The plan was ambitious. If they could strike simultaneously across multiple systems, the aliens might not be able to respond effectively. Jake stood in the main tunnel, looking at the volunteers who had joined their cause. Miners, engineers, shopkeepers, teachers, ordinary people who had become fighters because they had no choice. "Remember," he told them, "we're not trying to win a fair fight. We're trying to survive long enough to learn how to beat them. That night, the attacks began. On New Denver, Jake's team struck at the alien command center while Ben's ships attacked the orbital platforms. The aliens responded exactly as the AI had predicted. They pulled forces from other areas to reinforce the main base that left their supply convoys undefended. Lisa's teams hit 3 different convoys at once, capturing weapons and equipment. By the time the aliens realized what was happening, the humans had disappeared back into the tunnels. The same pattern played out across human space. On Port Victoria, the local resistance used captured alien transports to attack their own naval base. On New Harmony, survivors emerged from hidden shelters to sabotage alien mining operations. General Vorthek watched his carefully organized conquest fall apart. His forces were spread across dozens of systems, dealing with attacks that came from nowhere and went nowhere. Every time he reinforced one area, the humans would attack somewhere else. "They're not fighting like soldiers," he complained to Admiral Crickstall. "They're fighting like ... like criminals." Crickstall studied the tactical displays. The humans were using guerrilla warfare on a scale he had never seen. Each attack was small, but there were hundreds of them. His forces were bleeding to death from 1,000 small cuts. "Send more reinforcements," he ordered. "Double the garrison on every world." But that meant pulling ships from the main fleet. And Dr. Warren was ready for that dot, the first test of the resonance. Weapons came when Admiral Hayes led a strike against an alien supply depot. The human ships were outnumbered 10 to 1, but they had something the aliens didn't expect. "Target their lead destroyer," Hayes ordered. "Fire the resonance torpedo." The weapon looked like a normal missile, but it carried Warren's special frequency generator. When it hit the alien ship's shields, something amazing happened. The shields didn't just fail, they exploded, taking out the ship's main power systems. "It works," Chloe shouted from the lab on Earth as she watched the data. "The resonance effect is even better than we predicted." Within hours, the specifications for the new weapons were being sent to every human force. Suddenly, human ships that had been helpless against alien shields could fight back. Jake felt the change during the next resistance meeting. Instead of desperate survival, they were talking about taking back their colony. "The aliens are requesting more troops," Amy reported from her monitoring station. "They're having problems on at least 6 worlds." Kate smiled grimly. "Good, let's give them more problems." But the real change was happening in the minds of the human fighters. They had started the war believing they were doomed. Now they were beginning to believe they could win. Ben Torres put it best as he worked on his latest ship modification. "You know what the funny thing is? They still outnumber us 100 to 1, but they're fighting our kind of war now." He was right. The aliens had expected a quick conquest against primitive opponents. Instead, they were trapped in a grinding conflict against an enemy that learned and adapted faster than they could respond. In the depths of space, Admiral Crickstall reviewed the casualty reports and resource expenditures. The war was supposed to have been over in days. Instead, it was dragging on with no end in sight. For the first time since the invasion began, he wondered if the hegemony had made a mistake. 6 months after the invasion began, Admiral Crickstall faced something he had never experienced in 300 years of conquest: defeat. Not total defeat, not yet, but the steady erosion of everything he had built. The reports from the occupied human worlds painted a grim picture. New Denver, which should have been pacified months ago, was now a fortress of underground resistance. Jake Morrison's miners had become expert saboteurs, striking at alien supply lines with military precision. They hit 17 convoys last week, General Vorthak reported, his voice strained. Each attack was perfectly coordinated. They knew exactly where our patrols would be. Krikstal studied the tactical display. The humans had turned guerrilla warfare into an art form. They shared intelligence across light years, coordinated attacks between different star systems, and adapted to every countermeasure within days. On New Denver, Jake stood in what had once been a mining tunnel and was now the command center of a resistance network spanning half the colony. Maps covered the walls, showing alien positions, supply routes, and weak points in their defenses. The orbital platform has reduced its patrols, Lisa reported, studying sensor data. They're pulling ships back to protect their main fleet. Kate. Sullivan nodded approvingly. The former military officer had transformed desperate colonists into an effective fighting force. Her tactics manual, distributed through Amy Foster's communication network, was being used by resistance groups across human space. That's exactly what we wanted, Kate said. Every ship they pull back to defend themselves is one less ship attacking our people. Ben Torres entered the command center, oil stains on his coveralls. His workshop had become a miracle of improvised engineering. Mining ships had been converted into attack vessels, drilling equipment turned into weapons, and industrial fabricators reprogrammed to produce military supplies. The new torpedoes are ready, he announced. I managed to fit resonance generators into all 12 of our ships. The resonance weapons had changed everything. Dr. Warren's discovery on Earth had given human forces the ability to penetrate alien shields. What had seemed like invincible technology was now vulnerable to precise frequency attacks. On Earth, Warren's laboratory had become the nerve center of human military research. Chloe Martinez coordinated with resistance groups across known space, feeding tactical data into the adaptive AI system that had become humanity's secret weapon. The AI has cataloged over 300 alien attack patterns, she reported to Admiral Hayes. It can now predict their tactical responses with 92% accuracy. Hayes studied the projections. The hegemony's rigid military doctrine, once their strength, had become their weakness. They couldn't adapt fast enough to counter human unpredictability. What's the status of Operation Wildfire? He asked. Amy Foster, now coordinating communications from Earth, pulled up the latest reports. All fleet groups are in position. We can hit 47 hegemony systems simultaneously. It was the largest coordinated attack in human history. Instead of trying to match alien numbers, Hayes was using humanity's greatest advantage, the ability to think and act independently while working toward a common goal. The operation began at 800 Universal Time, across dozens of star systems. Small human fleets struck at alien supply bases, communication arrays, and isolated patrol groups. Each attack was precisely timed to maximize confusion and prevent coordinated response. Jake's team hit the alien fuel depot while Ben's ships attacked the orbital defense platforms. At the same moment, resistance groups on 17 other worlds launched their own attacks. The effect was like striking a spider web at multiple points. The entire structure began to collapse. General Vorthak watched his command network dissolve into chaos. Reports flooded in from across the occupied territories. Humans were attacking everywhere at once, and his forces couldn't respond effectively. Sir, we've lost contact with Fleet Group 7, an aide reported, and the supply base at Kepler. Station is under attack. Redirect the reserve fleets, Vorthak ordered. But even as he spoke, more reports came in. The humans weren't just attacking randomly. They were targeting the most critical points in the hegemony's supply chain. Doctor Warren's next breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Analysis of captured alien technology revealed that their entire command structure depended on a centralized communication network. If that network could be disrupted, the hegemony's coordination advantage would disappear. It's like a nervous system, Chloe explained, showing the network diagram. Cut the main pathways. and the whole body becomes paralyzed. Warren smiled grimly. Then let's give them a stroke. The virus took 3 days to create and test. It was designed to infiltrate alien communication systems and corrupt their data streams. But getting it into their network would require someone. To physically access a major hegemony command center, Jake volunteered for the mission. His team had been inside alien facilities before, and they knew New Denver's layout better than anyone. If anyone could reach the alien command center, it was them. This is suicide, Lisa protested as Jake prepared for the infiltration. There are thousands of guards between you and that communication array. Maybe, Jake admitted. But if we don't try, the war goes on forever. How many more people die while we play it safe? The infiltration began at midnight local time. Jake's team moved through maintenance tunnels that connected the colony's main dome to the alien command center. They had spent weeks mapping every pipe, every ventilation shaft, every access point. The alien guards were alert but predictable. They followed standard patrol patterns, never deviating from their assigned routes. It was exactly the kind of rigid thinking that humans had learned to exploit. Jake reached the communication center just as the night shift changed. In the confusion, he slipped inside and connected Warren's virus to the main data hub. The upload took only 30 seconds, but it felt like hours. Package delivered, he whispered into his communicator. The virus spread through the hegemony network like wildfire. Within hours, alien fleets across dozens of systems lost coordination. Orders became garbled. Status reports failed to reach command centers. The perfect military machine began to tear itself apart. Admiral Haas chose that moment to strike. The human fleet, no longer hiding in asteroid fields and nebulae, emerged to attack the confused alien forces. Ships that had been running and hiding for months suddenly became hunters. Target their command vessels, Hayes ordered. Without coordination, they're just isolated targets. The battle that followed was unlike anything in the war so far. Alien ships, unable to coordinate with each other, fell victim to precisely planned human attacks. The resonance weapons punched through shields that had seemed invincible just months before. On New Denver, Jake watched through the dome's transparent walls as alien ships exploded in the sky above. The orbital platforms that had enforced the occupation were burning. Escape pods fell like rain as alien crews abandoned their dying vessels. Is it over? Lisa asked, standing beside him. Jake shook his head. Not yet. But it's the beginning of the end. He was right. Across human space, the tide of war had turned. The hegemony's numerical advantage meant nothing when their forces couldn't work together. What had begun as an easy conquest had become a nightmare of coordination failures and tactical disasters. Admiral Krickstahl received the reports in stunned silence. In less than 24 hours, the hegemony had lost more ships than in the previous 6 months combined. Entire fleets had been destroyed or scattered. The occupation forces on human worlds were cut off from support. For the first time in his long career, he faced the possibility of total defeat. The humans, outnumbered 100 to 1, were winning. 1 year after the first alien ships appeared in human space, Admiral Krickstahl knelt in the ruins of his flagship's bridge. Around him, sparks flew from damaged consoles, while emergency lights cast strange shadows on the walls. The great Zephyrian hegemony, masters of thousands of worlds, had been brought to their knees by a species they had dismissed as primitive. The final assault had begun 3 days ago. Human fleets, no longer the desperate survivors of a year past, moved through hegemony. Space like avenging angels. Jake Morrison, now commanding a strike force of converted mining ships, led the attack on the orbital fortress above New Denver. All units, this is Jake, he said into his communicator. Target the main reactor. Let's finish this. His ship's Dove toward the massive alien station that had controlled the occupation of his world. The station's weapons fired desperately, but the human ships were too fast, too unpredictable. They darted between the energy beams like insects, getting closer. With each pass, Lisa Brooks, now his tactical officer, called out target coordinates. Hit them now. The resonance torpedoes struck the station's shields and tore through them like they were made of paper. Dr. Warren's frequency weapons had been refined over months of combat, turning the aliens' greatest strength into their fatal weakness. The station exploded in a ball of fire that lit up New Denver's sky. On the planet below, colonists emerged from hiding to cheer as debris rained down like falling stars. The occupation was over, but the real victory was happening far from New Denver. Admiral Sam Hayes commanded the human fleet from the bridge of his flagship as they surrounded the hegemony's core worlds. The aliens who had once attacked 7 human colonies with overwhelming force now found their own territory under siege. Admiral? Amy Foster reported from her communication station. We're receiving surrender offers from 6 different hegemony fleet groups. Hayes nodded grimly. The war had lasted exactly 13 months. In that time, the humans had gone from helpless victims to galactic conquerors. The species that had numbered in the millions now controlled territory once ruled by trillions. Secret had been adaptation. While the hegemony stuck to rigid tactics and predictable strategies, humans had learned and evolved. Every defeat had taught them something new. Every victory had made them stronger. Dr. Warren stood in his laboratory. On Earth, watching the final battle reports come in. Beside him, Chloe Martinez coordinated with human forces across dozens of star systems. The adaptive AI system that had started as a research project now controlled the largest military network in known space. The AI estimates that hegemony resistance will collapse within 72 hours, Chloe reported. Their command structure is completely broken. Warren felt a mixture of pride and sadness. They had won, but at a terrible cost. Millions of humans had died in the initial attacks. Entire colonies had been destroyed. The survivors had paid a price that would take generations to heal, but they had survived. More than that, they had proven something important about human nature. When faced with impossible odds, humans didn't give up. They adapted, they learned, and they found ways to turn their weaknesses into strengths. Kate Sullivan walked through the streets of New Denver, now free for the first time in a year. The colony showed the scars of occupation, damaged buildings, improvised defenses, memorial walls listing the names of the dead. But it also showed signs of hope. Children played in the streets again. Markets were reopening. Life was returning to normal. She stopped at the memorial wall and ran her fingers over familiar names. Too many friends had died in the resistance, but their sacrifice had meaning now. They had helped save not just New Denver, but all of human space. Ben Torres was already planning for the future. His workshop, which had produced weapons of war for a year, was being converted back to peaceful purposes. But the lessons learned would not be forgotten. Humanity would never again be caught unprepared. We'll need to study their technology, he told Jake as they surveyed captured alien equipment. Not just their weapons, but their ships, their computers, everything. We can learn from it. Jake nodded. The war had taught him that knowledge was the greatest weapon of all. The humans had won not because they were stronger than the aliens, but because they were smarter. They had learned faster, adapted quicker, and thought more creatively. The formal surrender came on a Tuesday. Admiral Krickstall, his once proud uniform torn and stained, stood before Admiral Hayes on the bridge of a human warship. Around them, the remnants of the hegemony fleet waited in formation, their weapons powered down. I offer the unconditional surrender of all hegemony forces, Krickstall said, his voice barely above a whisper. I ask only for mercy from my people. Hayes studied the alien commander who had once threatened to destroy human civilization. A year ago, this creature had commanded fleets that numbered in the millions. Now he was just another defeated enemy, broken by forces he had never understood. Your request is noted, Hayes replied formally. But the terms of surrender will be decided by the Colonial Council, not by me. The peace negotiations took 3 months. The human colonies, once victims of alien aggression, now dictated terms to their former oppressors. The hegemony's vast territory was divided among the surviving member species, most of whom were eager to be free of Zephyrian rule. General Vorthig, once the architect of human conquest, found himself in a prison cell on Earth. Historians and military analysts interviewed him daily, trying to understand how the war had gone so wrong for the hegemony. We never understood what we were fighting, he admitted during one session. We saw primitive weapons and small numbers. We calculated an easy victory, but we were fighting the wrong war. The interviewer, Dr. Sarah Kim from the War Studies Institute, leaned forward. What do you mean? We were fighting a war of numbers and technology, Vorthak explained. They were fighting a war of ideas and adaptation. Every time we thought we had them figured out, they changed. Every time we adapted to their tactics, they had already moved on to something new. It was the most honest assessment of human victory anyone had given. The hegemony had lost not because they were weak, but because they couldn't change fast enough to keep up with human innovation. Jake stood on the observation deck of Denver's new orbital station, looking out at the ships in the harbor. Human vessels shared space with alien craft from a dozen different species, former members of the hegemony, who now sought alliance with their former enemies. Lisa joined in at the window. Hard to believe it's over, she said. Is it really over? Jake asked. We control more territory now than we ever dreamed possible. What do we do with it all? It was a good question. Humanity had gone from a minor species controlling 7 colonies to a major galactic power ruling hundreds of worlds. The responsibility was enormous. Amy Foster had been appointed as the first director of interspecies relations. Her job was to manage the complex politics of the former hegemony territory. Dozens of alien species wanted independence, alliance, or protection from human forces. The key is not to make the same mistakes the hegemony made, she explained to the Colonial Council. They ruled through fear and rigid control. We need to rule through cooperation and shared benefit. It wasn't easy. Some alien species still harbored resentment toward humans. Others wanted revenge against the Zephyrians who had oppressed them. A few tried to restart old conflicts that had been suppressed under hegemony rule, but humans had learned something important during the war: how to adapt quickly to changing situations. The same flexibility that had won the war now helped them manage the peace. Dr. Warren's research. Teams worked with alien scientists to share technology and knowledge. The adaptive AI systems that had coordinated human military forces were now being used to manage trade, communication, and scientific research across dozens of star systems. We're not trying to build another empire, Warren explained to a gathering of alien representatives. We're trying to build something better, a confederation, where each species can thrive while working together for common goals. Chloe Martinez had become the chief architect of the new communication networks that connected the former hegemony worlds. Her systems allowed instant coordination across vast distances while respecting the autonomy of individual worlds. The transformation wasn't without problems. Some human leaders wanted to use their military victory to dominate the galaxy the way the hegemony had. Others preferred isolation, arguing that humans should focus on their own development rather than galactic politics. But the majority of humans understood what Jake and his fellow resistance fighters had learned during the war: survival required cooperation, adaptation, and mutual support. 5 years after the war ended, Jake returned to the mining tunnels where it had all begun. The old passages had been converted into a museum, preserving the equipment and hideouts that had sheltered the resistance. He stopped at the command center where Kate Sullivan had planned their operations. A plaque on the wall listed the names of all the resistance fighters who had died during the occupation. Below it, another plaque told the story of their victory. From these tunnels, it read, 200 miners and colonists began the resistance that freed human space and brought down the Zephyrian hegemony. Their courage proved that no force is too powerful to resist, and no odds are